So we're going to do FTP today. Download the lab. Hi, Daniel. I can't hear you in this classroom, so if you have questions, you can type it in the chat or comment. Let me share screen, and we'll start in a few minutes. Just give everybody a chance to get in a couple minutes, but you can definitely start before. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
You guys there? We'll start in a few minutes. We're doing two, well, the second one is really short, so just gonna do FTP today and a little bit on iSCSI. We can start our virtual box. Start in about a minute or two. We should be able to finish at 5. You don't have work today? Oh. No, I thought, are you still working at the Makerspace?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just stopped by there, but only Jonathan is there today. Jerry just left and Abraham just left.
Tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Hey, how you doing? We'll start in a couple of minutes. We're gonna do FTP server today. So if you don't want your DHCP to broadcast IP address to everyone, you can make sure that the settings is on host only for network. And then you can always, we will need to change this back to NAT in a little bit, so it will connect. But for now, that's fine, because I don't want it to be impacting your system when you're trying to access online stuff. Okay. So I'll go ahead and get started. So today we are going to do FTP server role on the virtual machine. And in the chapter, it talks about FTP as a command. But I want to show you what needs to go into a server, at least to get that started. And then you also notice that we did DHCP, but we didn't fully get everything set up with the user account. So here it reminds you that you have to go in and set up your administrator and your users and so on to be able to manage it. But that can be down the line, right? So you want to get all your roles up and running. And FTP is fairly easy to do, and it's only would be effective if you use it with web services. And Microsoft uses IIS. You don't have to have a server system to run IIS. You can use a Windows 10, a Windows 7, hi Michelle, or some kind of desktop to run web services. Now, keep in mind that when we do this, it will just be a public FTP server. We're not doing any kind of internal FTP server, because if we do, we have to set up the server for certificate that ties with, certificate authority, which, I didn't want to expand more on that because there's so many roles that you can add, and it's going to look for that. So we are just going to make it where it's open access to everybody. And you see it like Mozilla is one. You see a lot of these FTP public servers that they put up files. You can download stuff on there for free. You just have to log in. And so now if you don't create a login, in some cases back in the day, that's how they used to do it. But you want to track who's downloading what. Okay. All right. So you should have your virtual box running. And then once it's boot up, you just need to log in, and that's the initial part here. And then we are going to use the same procedure for all the add roles. So we are just going to use the server manager, and we are going to click the role base and feature installation. And we are going to add first your web services. So what Microsoft did, they package FTP with IIS. In the past, they did. So it's definitely useful that it's a one shot for us. Okay. So once your server is all booted, you would see the server manager dashboard, and then you're going to go into click add role. And once you're here, same thing, right? We're going to go next. We're going to have role base. So we are going to go next. And we only have one server right now. So we're going to go next. Just keep in mind that you got to remember your IP, because some point you have to put that in. So here is the roles that we're going to use. So we are going to click IIS, and it's going to give you this. So with this, you're going to have the IIS management console. So we are going to, so here, which step am I at here? So I'm at step 8. Okay, so we're going to click next, and then it's going to give you the role for IIS, and then you're going to go next. And then after that, when you get to role services, don't forget to pick FTP. But you can always go back to it if you haven't started the install. Okay, and if you did the install, you can always add the feature. So we're going to add the feature, and then we're going to go next. And then, so here is, it's going to give me all the feature. And with IIS, it's going to put the 4.7 framework. This is for Microsoft, so it's going to put the .NET there. And then the typical group policy management. So that way it would tie to the rules for your Active Directory and your group and users policy. And so just the default is fine. You're going to go next. And here it tells you what the IIS role is. So it's going to function as a web server. And this is going to give you the services to serve content. Like, you know, if you want certain page, things like that, you would then need to put it into a folder, and I'll show you where that's at in the root, the iNet root. Okay, then we're going to go next, and here is where we're going to select. So if you're running a regular server, this is where you're going to be selecting your services for your web. So for example, if I want like redirection of pages, you've seen those, right? Then you want to select that so that way you can link your pages to another server. And then if you want login and so on, but down here, okay, you're going to scroll down past security. We are going to select all the FTP options, the extensibility, the service under the FTP server. Now, the security part, if you are doing something that would relate to like web applications, database, stuff like that, you need to pick these. And it all depends on the objective of your web server. So if I'm running a web application server, so that's going to be the web and the application server combined. Likely that you will need to have SSL certificate. And even with secure FTP or FTP that require authentications on the secure level, you will need to have SSL certificate. And like I mentioned before, this ties with a role in Microsoft called certificate authority. It's a management role where it would be, we can manage the certificate, and that certificate can tie to encryption. It can tie to, because SSL is used in HTTPS, and that uses encryption. So it's going to tie to your user credential and a lot of the services that they require. So here is where you would see the website for the security, and you can select those, but we're not doing that right now, right? We're just going to select the FTP service. That's what it tells you here. So we are going to pick all the options, and then we are going to go next. So here it gives you the summary. So I have IIS, I have FTP, and with IIS, I have your typical HTTP management capability. It's going to log, and we can also put static content compression, and so on. So we can click install. So it's going to take a few minutes to go. And then after the installation is completed, then you are going to set up your iNet pub, which is a directory that is put there after you install IIS. Okay, and IIS uses 2 ports. Typically, the common port would be your port 80, which is for HTTP, and it uses port 443. But FTP uses a different port. But in order to get to access FTP from the outside of your network, you have to piggyback on port 80. So that's why you basically, in order to get to FTP, they have to use port 80 before they were able to get the service for the FTP. So we combine those to be able to bring the traffic to the FTP server. And so that's what you have, okay? So here it should be done. It tells me that it succeeded. So I can close this, okay? And now it should tell me that I have IIS there. Now, if you're doing Linux, on the Linux side, you have options in how you want your web services. The common one would be Apache. Apache has been around for a long time. So basically you install Apache and then you would use that. So you would see like Linux servers on the web quite a bit because Linux license is mostly, you know, open source. So you would see, and the development side of it is very flexible, right? Linux environment, you can add scripts, code, things like that. You can bring in packages. So definitely a lot of the web administrator, they prefer to use Linux-based server. Therefore, AWS, you see a lot of their stuff is their AWS Linux or some version of Linux, but you have so many different releases, you can implement that with the service. So all of these roles are just, you know, additional packages that you're bringing in or features and tools to be able to manage it, right? So that way it understands that that's the port, the services that it's using. So once I have it completed, I'm gonna go open up my file explorer, okay? And I'm gonna navigate to the CINET pub FTP root. I'm gonna make a folder. You want to put this in a folder so you can organize your site because you might have many FTP sites, right? In this one, we're only doing one, but I wanna show you that you need to manage it in the directory format or a current working directory. So in here, we just click on the folder icon. And then we go to this PC, C drive, and then there's your iNet pub. This is placed there when you installed IIS. Okay, and so if you at home, if you want to play around with this, you can install IIS on your Windows 10. And then, you know, you can put the content of your web page, like code it in HTML and put it there. And then you can just link it to your computer IP address. So whenever you open your browser and you type in your computer IP address, that's the web page is going to show up. It becomes a web server, right? And so that's simply that, okay? So once you open the iNet pub, you're going to see FTP root because we selected FTP. So it placed that folder there for us. Okay, so here inside FTP root, we are going to right click and then we are just going to make a new folder. And I put the FTP Site 01, but whatever you name your FTP server, that's the name that you want to use. Okay, that's just a generic name. So if your organization has some kind of name for your FTP, then you can keep that name just so you know, right? Like Mozilla, they would probably have, they have many sites to just actually service that. So they would link them together. So what you would have is you would have content for your FTP in here. So what do I really put in there? I can put, you know, things that I wanted to distribute in FTP. So FTP can be used to download OSs. FTP can be used to back up your recovery images. FTP can be used for text, right? Like documents and things like that in ASCII format. So it's a way for us to distribute file to people and share files with people into the world, right? So for companies that does forms and things like that, like they have a lot of forms, like, you know, public entity, right? Have a lot of that. They would have like, you know, whenever they update policies and things like that, they need to put it there for the user and then just link your web server to that. So that way it's available all the time, okay? So once I created the folder, I'm going to go ahead and right click the folder properties. And I wanted to make sure that I give the user higher permission for the content, because it allows them to actually store files there and delete the files and so on. So because this is, full control, all public, we're not, they can do whatever, right? But on your FTP, you have to have terms and conditions, right? You would say that using this, right, we're not liable for this and this and this and this and this, right? So if your files get deleted by someone else that's there, not our problem, right? So you would put all the legal stuff there first to just protect yourself. Okay, so sorry, to go here, and then we right click, go to properties, and then we're gonna go to security. And here, your typical user groups, users and groups from Microsoft. So you're gonna click the users, okay? And we are gonna edit. And we are gonna select users again, and we're gonna allow full control. So when you do that, it allows them to modify. You see that? So already they're able to read and execute and list folders. So if you want them to have more control, so the difference between the modification and the write in that they can delete things, right? So remove certain objects. So keep in mind that that's what you're allowing them to do, because if I'm uploading a file, what if it's a wrong file? I want to be able to like remove it, right? So you want to have the consideration for the user. But now, if you don't want the user to do that, then they, then you have to have a mechanism in there and say that, contact administrator or something like that. So, or, contact us and then we'll take care of it. So it becomes more administration on your part. Okay, so we can apply and then okay, and then okay there. Okay. Now, when you look at Microsoft documentation or different tutorials out there, they sometimes do this later in the game. I like to set it up before I start putting content and things like that and start, configuring my FTP. So once my FTP is ready to go, it's activated, then people start using it. You don't have to go back and trying to figure out like how to link that folder back into your IIS, your web services. Okay, so once you have that, you are going to go close your file manager or your file explorer, and then you are going to go to your IIS management console. Okay, so I close this and I'm going to go to tools, and then I'm going to go down to Internet Information Services there. So it's going to look like this, okay? And at this point, what you want to do is if you disable the network part, the network configuration up in your virtual machine, let's turn it back to NAT. Because you want it to see itself, because otherwise later on, it's not going to be able to find it. Okay. So when you click on this, you're going to see all of these features here. Okay. Because you have FTP, you're going to have the FTP section. If you only have IIS, it won't have these here. Okay. So there are authentications. There are a lot of these things that are web related. So in the background, you would see this is the stuff for the web server. That's how we manage it, right? Like this. And then we just link that folder content to this. Okay. All right. So now it tells me that on the server on the left side, you're going to click it and then you're going to see FTP firewall support. And that's not the firewall. It's just the side of the firewall for FTP. We have to go and configure firewall down the line, right? You got to control inbound and outbound. So you are going to go ahead and click on the firewall one, which shows right here, the red brick wall. Okay. And it says that you are going to on the center. Sorry, double click. Yeah, I was sleepy when I wrote that. Sometimes I'm like, did I put double click or a click? I know what I meant when I do it. All right. So here is where if you have an external firewall that's at the edge, which most likely that happens, right? Like every business out there, you're gonna see that they have an edge firewall. That's because, so traffic coming in it's gonna hit that first before it hits your server, even if you DMZ it, okay? So now, if you use an application firewall or any kind of firewall, that's gonna be the IP that you put, because that is it's a filter before all the public traffic comes in. Okay, so we don't have one right now. We don't have to put one there, but down the line, if you do have one, you have to go in and add it. Okay. And then for your data range, I like to keep my range about 2,000 to 4,000. But depending on the network, some network, you see this one when you scan it. When we did the lab on Tuesday, we saw that they're using range in the 5,000 and the 6,000. So you want to scale your range higher. You can go from 2,000 to 7,000, right? That's the network, the ports that you're supporting. Because if you don't have that in the channel range, what will happen is it will drop that traffic. Okay. So for this one, I think I put down 2,000 to 4,000, and you can always go back and edit it. Okay. So 2,000 to 4,000. And when we use services, it's always tied with the port, it always tied with the protocol. So we want to make sure we manage 3 parts, okay, outside of IPs and the physical connection. Okay, any question? Okay, so once we have the range, we are going to click apply, and then we're going to right click the server, and we're going to add the FTP site. Okay, so where's the apply button? Right here. I love it when they hide things so well, right? Like you would think that they will put it here, developer, but yeah, it's right here. So if you're gonna get used to Microsoft Console, the task that you need to accomplish is on the right. The system that you need to manage is on the left. The configuration stuff that you need to modify is in the middle. That's their design concept. Okay. So this is why. So it's going to tell me here that please configure your firewall. It reminds you, right, to allow access, because we're not done, right? These are the range, and we're going to make sure that those range gets into our Windows firewall. Otherwise, it's going to kick it out. Okay. All right. So we got that. Then we're going to right click. And then we are going to add an FTP site. Now, if you do just web server, you just do an add website, and then you manage the content for that there. Like I would add an index file and all of the subsequent file for my pages and the images and all the things like that. It's really easy to actually do web administrator stuff, right? Like I did some of that. And I did get more. I felt like I wanted more, so I started transitioning to applications and other things. So that's how I learned to program a little better. But okay, so for the FTP site name, I just use a generic site here, but you're welcome to use your own name. So I just put FTP _ site 01, or you can just put your server number, whatever, right? What would be suitable for the organization. So the physical path, the browse button, you are going to browse it, and you're going to come back to your FTP root folder that we saw earlier. You have to link it here. Okay, so click the browse, go to C drive, and then iNet pub, and then FTP root. Because if you don't have it here, right? And then click your FTP Site 01 folder, because we made a folder. Because if you just put it to the root, then your content has to be in that root folder. So I forgot to put the link, the full path, but you need to put it to the folder for that site. Okay, then click OK. So your path is there. So that means that everything that relates to this particular FTP site, the content of it we need to throw it in that folder. And then we're gonna go next. So then we are going to do some binding and SSL, and because FTP uses port 21, we are going to link our IP address to that port. I am very forgetful lately, so I just type out my IP address so I remember. Getting senile there. So if you have a bunch of servers, right, it's going to list the servers that you have there. But since we have one here, so that's the IP that I'm going to use. So you click the drop down arrow, and then you just got to make sure that it's port 21. Okay. Now, if you want to do a virtual host name, it's going to link to your DNS. So it will say ftp.yourdomain. But I think I have you do, yeah, we're not going to do that part. So we are just going to do, we're going to check the box for the start FTP site. And then we are going to select no SSL because we don't have a certificate authority. And in this case, it's just a public FTP server. Okay, so check, that's already checked. We are going to click no SSL, because if you do require SSL or allow SSL for more security, you will have to set up the certificate, and that has to be ready at this point. So we are going to do no SSL, and then we're going to go next. And so now I'm sure that you probably learned in security class, or you read somewhere that, you know, we want to move away from using anonymous. Anonymous could be anyone, right? So it's really depending on how you want to track the people who are using it. Personally, I don't like using anonymous, but there are still a lot of organizations that still use anonymous for FTP. So what I have here is you can select basic, but if you want to add anonymous, you can. Just keep in mind that, you know, anyone can be anonymous. Okay, so basic means that they have to have some kind of user account and a password to be able to do that, and it creates a login for you. And we want that. We want them to be able to register themselves and access our stuff, right? Yes. Yes, you do. Yeah, you will get that. And you can't go forward at this point without a certificate. Okay, so you have to then go to server manager and then enroll the CA, and then set up the CA. And Microsoft like to use Kerberos with their CAs. So then you have to pick like the X509 or a certain type of certificate to tie it with. So, all right. So now we are going to allow all users. So if you use anonymous, you can also add the anonymous in there, right? And then we want to give them read and write, right? They need to see, and then they need to change. They need to add more files, upload and download. So we're going to click finish. Okay, so I already did 17, and then I finished 18. So we're going to go back to IIS, and we're going to click on site, and then you should be able to see. Okay, so when I come here, I should see my site there. And you can always go in and change, you know, whatever that you need for it, and that will be linked to your FTP server. So if you have more sites, that will be listed. So screenshot right now showing your new site added. and you can change your permission on the right, right? So you notice that it started it for me. Once I go do that, right? In the case that you want to pause it, you can stop it and you can restart it, but it automatically does that for me. Okay, so we're going to close the IS manager. Now we're going to go to Windows Firewall. So Windows Firewall, you can just call it up. Just say Firewall. Just say Windows Defender Firewall. And it's automatically on the time that you install it, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to click Advanced Settings. This is your other Microsoft best friend, right? We know, like I just, it's so, I'm like, well, where's Advanced Settings? It's so common that we use it. So, okay. So I only put down for the inbound rules because it's a public site. So you're going to get a lot of traffic coming in from the internet. So here, I just want to show you how you can, I know some of you already done this many times in other classes, but for this part, it's important that you set it up. Otherwise, no good with FTP server. Nobody can reach it. Okay. So we are going to make a new inbound rule, and we are going to set up the port 21, and we are going to choose TCP. If you want to use UDP, you can. Okay. I think I put both for that. Go to the right, remember, task on the right, configuration in the middle, and our system on the left. So we are going to then click port and then go next. And then we choose this TCP. Okay. And then, yeah, I forgot to tell you to put in the port. Sorry. We need to put you can put all local ports, or let's also put the 2000. I missed that step when I wrote it down. To 4000, the ports that you specify in the other one. Okay, see how they have the example here? Okay, so whatever the range is, you need to put it. Go next. And then we are going to allow the connection and then go next. Okay. Now, if you wanted to make it like, you know, secure FTP, then you have to implement this. And then that's going to apply it all the way across. Domain, public, private for everybody. Okay. So, and I'm so creative. I put FTP inbound. But you can choose whatever name that you want. Something that means, you know, it has significant meaning to that. Click finish. And it's there now. Okay. And then if you want, you can set up the outbound rules. If you wanted to filter, you can definitely do that. Okay, so that part is done. I'm sorry? Yes. Yeah.
What kind of, I guess, outbound filters would you set up?
So the only thing that you probably need, because this is a public, is I felt like it only need the inbound. The outbound is if you wanted to look for, you know, certain application in case there's embedded stuff that's leaving with it, but I don't think that it needed anything else, because this is wide open and we're not going to care much about it, right? We're just going to check the traffic that's coming in, and we want to make sure that everybody's like safe. But yeah, so the outbound rule, you can probably set up something that might be application related. So you can choose like program, and because FTP has executable, okay, so you want to kind of monitor that a little bit, but you should have other appliances that's already sitting there that's looking, right? Like you should already also have a filter that's not software related. It will be an appliance. on the DMZ side. Okay.
Is it named exactly how we named it? No?
Yeah, you can call it FTP Site 1 inbound if you want it for that particular site. I just, you know, I got lazy and I just use a generic
I
name,
know, I
but
mean, is that how you, the name, is that the exact name you'll see in the rules list?
yeah, did it not save it? Oh yeah, so it's related to, okay, so I have server in passive. It might be, you might have to search it though. So I think it might be in this group right here, but it's customized. Oh, right here, it's at the top. Yeah, it should put it either on the bottom or the top. Thank you. So you can filter it too. Okay, so we're done with that one. And this one. So we're good. So that's it, right? So now if you wanted to get it running, you just got to get your web server going, right? So you may want to put like a static page and then a link, you know, click here to access files or authenticate some kind of interface. And then you throw some files into the folder or make subdirectory and then link that back. So on the web server side, there would be a folder that stores you that has some kind of account related stuff. Not a good security practice, but then if you have a database for user account, then you would link it to that, and then whatever they make, it's going to transport it to the database and so on. So all of this stuff, like, you know, the things that you use every day, it's either RAM or storage. A lot of the times it's that. Okay, application wise. Okay. So now we're going to do file. So the version that you got, the OS, it already put file and storage there. Okay. Now, depending on the releases that you get with the OS, I know that 2019, they put it there already. 2016 server, it's not there. Then you have to install it. I know that, you know, whether this is the standard edition that's trial, so you get this, you know, this is for the smaller scale network, and then you have the enterprise, which is a little larger, or the largest is the data center. Okay, so we don't have to do this part for C, but if you're using an OS that requires that, you have to actually, yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have to do 27. But we are going to have to do Isc Target. Okay, so we have to add that feature. So let's do that. We already have the file and storage services that's already here. How do I know? I would see that here. If you click on it, it tells you that here. Okay. Actually, this, okay. So it tells me that if I want the iSCSI target, I have to go through the user, the add roles. Okay, so we have to do that. So we'll go back to dashboard, go add roles and features, go next, role-based feature, next. And then our server, go next. Okay. And it already have the file and storage services. So I am like the first 4 steps or 2 steps, right? And I don't need to select anything. Wait, until here. So I'm going to expand the little triangle, right? I just want to make sure that I have that. You saw that I have the iSCSI. So what this does is it virtualizes your disk. We can make it into like a virtual disk and treat it as a separate disk. So because Microsoft has a rule that you cannot back up things if it's on C, right? You have to have an actual physical disk that's not that main disk, your main drive. So what we can do is on the software level, we can elevate this by taking our C drive and then section some of that and make it logically virtual. Okay, And SCSI is a form of hard drive that was very, it's legacy. It's a long time ago. So they kept their name and they make it iSCSI to make it, you know, more virtual based. So then you would then go to, what was it? Where am I? So we already select that. We're going to go next. And then we are going to confirm. And then missing anything. Okay. 1 second. Let me double check and make sure because right. Yeah, that's all it has. Earlier I could have sworn I saw. Okay. All right, then we are gonna have the framework and then we're gonna go next and we're gonna click install and then we're gonna click close. Why does it say? Did you see the SCSI target?
I think if you go back on your file and
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. That's what I remember. Thank you. There it is. Thank you. So we gotta expand the iSCSI services and then you gotta do the SCSI target service. So there are different type of file server. You have the delegation for different file server. You can have file server to do branch caching on the network for all your network files. You can have NFS stands for network file server. Those are like kind of like your large scale SANs, right? And then, you know, working folders where you can mount it to different profiles and things like that. So there are different options, which is great now compared to the prior OS. And then we're going to go next. And so make sure that we have that in there and we're going to click install. And this takes a few minutes. So I rewrote this section, I think 4 times for your lab because I started doing like the NSF and then I realized that, oh yeah, you know, they have to install all these other things too. And then, you know, it would take more than an hour. And then so I scratched that and then I went back. I was like, oh, maybe we'll do EFS. And so I was like, okay, we'll just do target server. And, you know, so at least you can see how file server kind of work, you know, for this scale. Okay, so it succeeded. We're going to close. Okay, so then once we install, we are going to open up the file explorer. We're going to go to C. We're going to make a new folder and we can call it explore. You can call it anything you want. You can say, you know, my files, you know, whatever. Okay, so, and I'll just make a new folder. And whichever drive that you want to put that on, it doesn't have to be C. So if you have D, E, F, G, whatever, right, you put it there. So I'll just name it Explore. So that way we keep it the same. And then we are going to go back to your server dashboard. And then we are going to click on file storage and then we're going to expand iSCSI. And we're going to make a virtual disk link. So at this point, go back to the dashboard, go to File and Storage, and then iSCSI is here. And you are going to click this. See how it doesn't tell me that I need a target anymore, right? It sees it now. So we're going to click that blue link in the middle. And it tells me that my C drive is about 50 gigs, but it's using up 10 already for my Windows server. So I'm gonna make the virtual disk on that. Okay. So I click that and then we are gonna custom the path on the bottom and browse to the folder in SEP32. So here is your browse button all the way on the bottom. You can scroll down here. Okay. It took me out of that, sorry. Click browse and then see and then explore and then select the folder. So why do I make a folder? It wants a directory, a folder, so that way it can link that portion of the drive to it. So whatever you put in that folder, it's gonna then refer to the virtual SCSI instead of your C drive, even though it's on your C drive, right? So ideally, we would not make it on the C drive, but since we only have one drive on this one, we're gonna have to at least learn it, right? But you want to put this on D or E or some other drive. Okay. And then you are going to input the name. We can say test target. Sorry, I meant test target. Test target 1 or whatever name you wanted, explore 1. Okay. Yeah, whenever I do that, it takes me there. Okay, what did it say? So custom path, create and input the name such as. Yeah,
The virtual disk there, then we put the left column.
yeah, but I just gotta make sure that I mount it. I see it, but I didn't select it earlier, so make sure that you select your drive. I'm missing a couple steps. I didn't document everything there, but okay. Then we wanted to just name it. So test target 1. So now, as you can see, it would have the path there. Okay. Then the drives. Yeah, I think I'm missing the step here. I think I meant to do this in the path. So 1 second. Yeah, I can't click next.
Oh,
I just gotta pull it up, I guess. That will help. Sorry, my brain is somewhere else today. All right, so 5. I was like, where is my button? Okay. I left my brain at home. Okay, so here is where you can have how you want it to use. What they're saying is that there's different option you can have it. Normally it's gonna default to dynamic, and well, you want to use dynamic where it writes everywhere, right? Fast, compared to where it would be fixed size. So we are going to choose dynamic, and we're gonna click next. And then we are going to choose new SCSI target and then click next and you're going to add it. And we have the new SCSI target. It picks that for us. Okay, and this is where you're going to put your target name. Yep. So just give it a name. And then go next. So I also missed that. Then you're going to click add. Okay. So here we're at this step here. And then we are going to open add initiator ID. And we are going to have the enter value, select a type under the type, and then the IP address. Try to select the type. under type, you are going to put IP address, and then you are going to put in your server IP address here. Sure, I have everything there. Okay. Add the initiator ID. I meant by that when I put that down. Oh yeah, that is initiator. Okay. So now we have it. Okay. So you can use different type of ID. In this one, we're just going to use the IP to really identify which system has the drive that would be mounted as a virtual drive with the folder that we created. Okay. Then we're going to go next, and then we're going to enable authentication service. So here is where you would want to specify how you want the user to access that. We are going to use CHAP, and you know CHAP has vulnerability, even though it's different. It's a newer version that they're using, but you know everything has vulnerability. You can't be 100%. So at this level, this is the option that you would get. You can use the regular CHAP and the reverse CHAP. So we are going to enable CHAP, and then you can put in a username. Okay, so you can put in any username and password you want. So I'm just going to put target user and then a password. Oh, it has to be at least 12 characters long. I'm sorry, passphrase. Okay. So once you have the passphrase put in and all that, you can click create. And then we're gonna, so it sets everything up for me. So now you have a virtual disk, right? And that's for your, it's gonna be linked to your file storage server role, and it's gonna have a certain access level for that particular disk, the 5 gig that you made. Okay. So now you would see that here. Now it tells me that it's not connected. Okay. So once we have that, you can take a screen capture, you can close the window, but I want to address this in that, see how it's there and it's not connected? I'm not done. Okay, so the next level for this is that you would then need to assign it, and then, you know, you would go next and then assign and then close. Okay, then also there are additional steps to this, but at least you can see how you can create a virtual disk for your file server for a certain type of user, or a certain user, I should say. Okay, and but we would use other area for other things like working folders. You know, if you want more of like a network broad base, instead of giving a drive to a user account, you can also use the NSF, the network file server type of role, which is part of this right here. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is to really manage the shares. Okay, and then you can control how much of the disk that you want to give a certain user. Now you would then have to install the file server resources under the wizard, so it tells you what to do here. When you take the Microsoft class, usually there will be one lab that just focus on this, because
file management is such a granular thing for a lot of administrator. It's a headache. And some people now, most companies use Azure or SharePoint, which is just file server somewhere else. And it's linked through your online account like Outlook and other things. So your credential gets carried there, and then you just gotta manage their mailbox along with whatever files that they also have via OneDrive and other things. So that in itself is a lot of work. There are a lot of jobs for SharePoint. I encourage, if you like Microsoft, that's one of the area, like there, Azure and SharePoint is one of the highly demanded area for the Microsoft side, and Exchange. But most people don't do so much Exchange in-house anymore. They house that out to Azure. So, you know, Microsoft will handle some of that via Outlook, but you still have to manage some of the things. I used to have to do quota on mailboxes, meaning that like you have to delete your mail, right? Me personally, I don't. I keep everything because I might need it. There's legal aspect in that, right? But you know, you can control their mailbox to be like 5 gigs. You also can control attachments, where you know how people send really large picture files, and you notice that Google does that. It resizes your file, right? So you know there's mechanism in that, so you can control the quota. That's what they're called, the quota in attachment and the storage on the mailbox itself, and then you have other container that is related to that. So you know, diving through that, what you would do is you would set up group policy management for that, and you just apply it to that group. And so that way you don't have to drill down for every single object that's in your network. And you know, now I think the newer OS, there's a lot of tool and mechanism in place for it. You just got to know how to use it effectively, and then to be able to do that. But over, you know, business, they're going to try to control the costs in you know, having a large cloud or a small cloud or a very, you know, a lot of drives for your server by making you do that. So they would say that we can cut costs, right? Because every so often you have to present that IT would need this and this and this and this. We would need more drives, we would need more RAM, we would need more server, and then you have to weight that against how much that would save you if you go with Azure, AWS, and so on. Okay, because you know, people always try to say that, oh, IT always buy boxes. We always buy machines, and then because we know that our machines would make it better if you configure it right. Okay, so the certification, I think there's a class called system administration that deals with, you know, the Exchange side, the SharePoint, and the Linux website. That's my intention when I wrote that class, was to give you a little bit more on the infrastructure and the DevOps, because even at Cal State San Bernardino, they might not give you, you know, the overall picture. When I approach these classes, I ask myself, like, if I was to train a technician to work for me, how would I want them to be? And that was my approach, was I want them to be well-rounded in this and this and this, and then that way, at least you can start there and you can say, okay, you know, I can scale up. So I think finishing the certificate, and if you apply your knowledge, you can probably enter like level 1 or level 2. I've had students that gone into level 2 right away, which makes higher pay, and you know, it's good. So there's different tier in technician level. But the security side is that you have to go through the IT side, because you have to know all of these things, how they work, in order to protect them, right? So when I teach these classes, I like to tie in, why are we doing this? What would benefit on the security side? Because when I was doing it, I have to go back and say, I have to fix the problem of the people who did it before me that did not have the perspective in security. So when you have the knowledge in security, IT is easier, okay? Because you know that your end goal is here and you're here, and you just need to make sure that you get all your configuration to get you there. That's all it is. That's the game, right? And then you always gonna have to keep up with it. So, you know, it's a never ending process. Okay. And they keep saying that there's shortages in the job. So, you know, there's always going to be work. And it seems like it's hard to get in right now, but, you know, a couple years from now, you're going to look back and say, oh, you know, that was just the beginning. So, any question? Okay. So I will put the lecture video up. The quiz and the quiz game is up now on Canvas. And I did extend it. I'm sorry, I did put it up kind of late. So you have a whole week to do it. You don't have to do it this weekend. Okay, so I do want you to have some time and relax and things like that. Okay, let me stop my recording.